Welcome to this review that I am very happy to share with you today. My name is Coach Jaki, and I hope you had a good week. Today, I am very pleased to be sharing this review of the year 2020 with you. I mean, it's been a tough year. No one denies that. But hey, it's December, and here we are 9 months later, 9 months since the first case of COVID-19 was recorded in this country, in Kenya. It's been tough. It's been tough on everyone. What is interesting is that despite all the suffering that a lot of people have had to endure, a lot of people are also talking about the discoveries that they have made about themselves, about strengths that they have turned to that they didn't use often before, or that they didn't even realize that they had before. So today's reflection is an opportunity to capture those struggles, but also to recognize those qualities that have helped us through. It's honestly a moment in time that many people will never forget. So if you registered before and you got the instructions for the time capsule, I hope that you have already started working on the reflection. It's a very personal reflection, so I don't expect you to share your thoughts here, but I would still be interested to know what your experience of doing the reflection has been. In fact, this reflection is in itself an exercise in self-compassion, and I will be talking later about self-compassion, which is a gift that you can give yourself. And one of the questions in the reflection is, what gift would you like to give yourself? You are recognizing that you have suffered, but you are also looking upon yourself with kindness. And this really is what self-compassion is. For those who don't have the reflection, I am going to repeat the questions, and you can also send me an email after this, or you can always send me an email if you want me to send you the reflection by email. So the questions are, first of all, I am becoming a person who ... Remember, this is a reflection, so there is no right or wrong answer. The second question is, this is the gift I most want to give myself. And gifting yourself is an act of self-compassion. The most important thing I want to remember about this period is, and then the fourth one is, the most significant struggles I have experienced this year are. These two questions are really about recognizing that it has not been easy, that you have suffered, without dwelling on the suffering and the pain that you have experienced. And this, again, is an important aspect of self-compassion. My most significant accomplishments this year are, I mean, if you are here today, December, 9 months later, you have accomplished many things, and this is an opportunity for you to recognize those accomplishments. And then finally, the sixth question is, these are the words of wisdom I most want to hear in the future. So this sixth question sort of launches you into the future, into your aspirations, because it's not over. There is a tomorrow, and we want to capture, to be ready for tomorrow. So please let me know what your experience is of answering these questions. And if you want me to send them to you by email, please let me know, jaki@lifeskillscoaching.co.ke. The second thing I wanted to do today is to talk about self-compassion. And I'm going to begin by just defining what compassion is. It is described as concern for the sufferings or misfortunes of others. And having compassion for oneself is exactly the same thing, except that in this case, the compassion is directed at yourself, at oneself. And how does compassion manifest? The first thing about compassion is that you must notice suffering. You must notice that the other person is suffering. If you do not notice that the other person is suffering, you cannot be compassionate towards them. If you look away when you are passing by the homeless person on the street, you cannot be compassionate to them. If you don't listen to somebody else's story when they are in pain, when they are suffering, you cannot be compassionate to them. So the first aspect of compassion is to notice. Then noticing is followed by being moved by whatever you notice, being moved by the suffering or the pain of the other person. In fact, the word compassion means to suffer with. Being moved means feeling some warmth or some caring or some desire to help the suffering person in some way. And so having compassion means offering some understanding or kindness to the others when they, not only when they suffer, but also when they make mistakes, as opposed to judging them harshly. And thirdly, when you feel compassion for another person, as opposed to feeling pity for them, it means that you recognize that suffering and failure are a part of a shared human experience. So for compassion to manifest, you notice, you feel moved, and you acknowledge that suffering and failure or making mistakes are part of the shared human experience. So exercising self-compassion means acting in the same way towards yourself. When you fail, when you make a mistake, when you are suffering, when you notice something that you don't like about yourself. So instead of just ignoring your pain with, that attitude of mwanadamu ni kujikaza, like it's, you have to withstand suffering. You don't have to take that mentality. You can stop and tell yourself, this is really difficult right now. And then exercise self-compassion by going ahead and asking yourself, how can I take care of myself? How can I comfort myself in this moment? Because it's a moment in time. It's not who you are. It's not everything that you are. It is not all of your time. These situations where you need self-compassion are moments in time, moments in your life. So instead of mercilessly judging and criticizing yourself because of your inadequacies or because of shortcomings, self-compassion means that you are kind and understanding to yourself when you confront personal failings. And so self-compassion can lead you to try and make changes in ways that allow you to be more healthy and more happy. You can seek to make changes that allow you to make less mistakes. And you do that because you care about yourself, not because you are unacceptable as you are, or because you're worthless as you are. I think that it's also important to remember that having compassion for yourself means that you accept and honor your humanness. Things will not always go the way you want them to. You will be frustrated, losses will occur, you will fail, you will fall sick. Life happens. But this is a human condition, and it is a reality that is shared by all of us. I mean, look at this pandemic. I don't think that anything in the recent past has shown us how we share the human condition in the way that this shared pandemic has shown us. And so the more you open yourself to this idea that it is human to suffer, it is human to fail, it is human to be imperfect, the more you will be able to feel compassion for yourself and for other human beings. Research has actually been conducted to help establish the beneficial nature of self-compassion. And if you want to know about this research, you can look up the work of positive psychologists. You can go to positivepsychology.com. And research has actually shown that self-compassionate individuals experience greater resilience and greater psychological health than those who don't have compassion for themselves. I'm now going to talk about how self-compassion differs from self-judgment or self-criticism. And this is taken from the work that was done by Neff, from Neff's theoretical model. If you want these references, you can write to me and I will send them to you. Self-compassion involves kindness, as I have said, it involves common humanity, and it also involves mindfulness. So I'm going to look first at kindness versus self-criticism. When you feel inadequate, rather than ignoring, rather than self-criticism, or when you are in pain, rather than ignoring that pain and criticizing yourself, self-compassion means that you recognize that you are imperfect, that failure is inevitable, and so you are gentle with yourself in that moment that you are experiencing that pain or that failure, and you don't get angry at life. Because, I mean, people don't always get what they want. Fighting against this reality increases stress. Denying this reality increases frustration. But accepting it with sympathy and kindness towards yourself will help you to get through that moment. The second thing about self-compassion is that it recognizes common humanity. And so when you are going through those moments of suffering or those moments of pain or those moments of failure, recognizing that you are not alone. It's not happening to you alone. COVID is not happening to any one person or any one country alone. So self-compassion means that you don't see yourself as suffering in isolation, but you recognize that it is human to suffer and other human beings also suffer, maybe in the same way, maybe in different ways. And so you ride the wave knowing that you are not alone. And the third thing about self-compassion is that you don't deny the suffering, you don't deny the mistakes or the failure, but at the same time, you don't over-identify with it. Just because you have failed doesn't mean that is who you are. Just because you are suffering doesn't mean that you will suffer always or all the time. So self-compassion requires you to take a balanced approach to your bad moments, you know. Don't ignore them by all means. Recognize that they are there, but at the same time, don't dwell so much on them that it becomes your life. And this actually comes from being willing to observe your negative thoughts and emotions with openness. As I've said, it's really about accepting that this is a human condition. For example, if you're angry at somebody, acknowledging that you are angry because they did something, it does not excuse what they did, but you allow yourself to feel the emotion, but don't dwell on it. So being kind to yourself, accepting that pain, suffering, failure are part of the human condition, and acknowledging those things without over-identifying with them are important aspects of self-compassion. Now the question is, how do you practice self-compassion? And I would be very interested to know if you would like to share, please share in the comments or in the chat box. Before I share some examples, I want to introduce to you this concept of yin and yang, or yang. It is drawn from ancient Chinese philosophy, and yin and yang are actually represents the concept of dualism, describing how seemingly opposite or contrary forces are actually complementary, interconnected, and interdependent in the natural world. And they coexist. One does not exist without the other, or they interrelate. Yin is often seen as the receptive or the feminine, and yang is the proactive or the masculine. So they are not opposing forces, and they operate as a dynamic system. So the whole is actually greater than the assembled parts. According to this philosophy, everything has both yin and yang aspects. So just to give some examples, shadow cannot exist without light, and light cannot exist without shadow. Life cannot exist without death, and death cannot exist without life. So yin and yang, dualism, two things that together form the whole and coexist. Coming back to self-compassion, yin self-compassion involves soothing and comforting yourself when you're suffering. So you might be experiencing resentfulness or anger because you're overwhelmed at work. And so at the end of the day, you go home, you draw yourself a bath, you make yourself a cup of tea, or you pour yourself a glass of wine, and you sip this slowly as you listen to relaxing music. This is an example of yin self-compassion, soothing, comforting actions. Yang self-compassion manifests itself as speaking up and protecting yourself. I could describe the yang self-compassion as the activist self-compassion. If we stay with the example of being overwhelmed at work, yang self-compassion would manifest itself in perhaps having a conversation with your boss, talking about the conditions at work and the impact that it has on you and other people, asking for changes in policy, perhaps asking for changes in your workload, maybe asking or taking some time off. So this is not about soothing and comforting yourself, but it's really being proactive about changing the conditions that lead to the overwhelm that you feel at work. There are other examples that I can share which will help you to contrast between yin and yang self-compassion. You might have experienced people who, in moments of suffering as a result of disease, for example, will accept that suffering, that pain stoically. They will take their medication, but they will accept that suffering, especially if it is a terminal illness. They will accept it as the way it is, and they will do their best to live through it. You might also have experienced people who, under similar conditions, will try anything that might eliminate the disease. So it's not a question of which is the right way to deal with the disease or the pain and suffering that it begins. There are just two ways that one can deal with pain and suffering, yin and yang. If you think about the serenity prayer, yin might be the part that says, accept what I cannot change. Being willing and willingly open to accepting what is. And yang might be the part that says courage to change what I can. So being proactive to do something about the situation that is causing you pain or suffering. And so self-compassion balance includes both strong proactive actions and those nurturing, soothing actions that I spoke about earlier. So now I am going to proceed to share with you an exercise that you can do to help you explore and develop both yin and yang self-compassion. And this exercise is taken from work that has been done by Seth Fontaine of Positive Psychology. And again, you can go to the website positivepsychology.com for more exercises on self-compassion, and other positive psychology concepts. The first thing that I would like to ask you to do is that you think of a situation where you are having difficulty at the moment. It could be stress at work or an argument with a close family member. Take some time to describe that situation in writing in a few sentences. Next, I would like to invite you to come up with at least one self-compassion action for each of the 3 aspects of yin self-compassion. The 3 aspects of yin self-compassion are comfort, self-soothing, and validation. And I would like to invite you to write them down. I will guide you through this. First, write down one thing that you can do to take care of your emotional needs. This is a comforting action. For example, you could talk to a trusted friend. Write down one action that you can take to make yourself feel physically calmer and more at ease. This is a soothing action. For example, you could take a gentle walk. And thirdly, write down one thing that you can say to yourself to validate your feelings. This is a validation action. For example, you could tell yourself that it's normal to have arguments, but you trust that you are going to find a way out. These 3 actions are examples of yin self-compassion actions that you can take. Now, let us move to develop some yang self-compassion actions. And we are going to refer to the same current situation that you identified earlier at the beginning of this exercise. Again, I am going to invite you to identify 3 actions that you can take for each of 3 aspects of yang self-compassion. These 3 aspects are protection, provision, and motivation. I will guide you through this. First of all, write down one thing that you can do to stop those who are hurting you or to stop the pain that you are inflicting on yourself in the situation that you described. This is protection. So for example, you can go away from the situation. You can go away from the place where the situation is happening. Create some distance between yourself and that location. Secondly, you can please write down one thing that you can do to give yourself what you need. For example, you can give yourself permission to spend money on something that you need. This is provision. So use up some of your money for something that you need, like a holiday or perhaps paying for a coach. And thirdly, write down one thing that you can do to motivate yourself with kindness, support, and understanding rather than criticism. For example, you can tell the person that you feel bad, that you understand that the 2 of you contribute to the situation, that you would like time to reflect on your role in the disagreement, and that you would like them to do the same. So those are 3 actions to exercise self-compassion in the young way, to exercise protection, provision, and motivation for yourself in the situation that you identified. This exercise that you have done is designed to help you take a balanced approach to self-compassion. And the actions that you have written down are practical actions that you can implement in regards to the situation that you identified at the beginning. But you can also do the same exercise in regards to any other situation that you may encounter that causes you pain, suffering, or that makes you feel that you have failed or that you have made a mistake. Self-compassion can be a gift to yourself. And my invitation to you, as you do the review exercise, as you think about the gift that you would like for yourself, is to consider self-compassion as a gift. Thank you very much for your participation. Please remember that you can always send me an email with your questions. If you want to do the time capsule exercise as I described in the email that I sent to those who registered before, you're welcome to do so. But you could also just do it for yourself and keep it for yourself and come back to it later so that you can see all the qualities that you have that have helped you to navigate this exceptional year. This is Coach Jaki. Thank you very much for your attention. Ciao.